The distinct sound of my wife's joyous peals of laughter, usually a comforting melody, now drifted through the slender partitions of our residence in Portland, a sound that was not directed at me. It was 11:47 in the evening, and I found myself in the kitchen, still attired in my sanitation department work attire. My gaze was fixed upon the scattered remnants of beer bottles adorning our dining surface, resembling the silent witnesses of a transgression I had not yet committed. 3 distinct voices, all male and all disturbingly familiar, filled the air. "Come on, Sarah," one slurred. "Show us what you did for Danny last week." I recognized the voice of Jake Morrison, a confidant from my formative years at Roosevelt High, the very same Jake who had stood beside me as my best man merely 4 years prior. My hands trembled slightly as I placed my keys upon the wooden countertop. Their metallic clink was a mere whisper. Through a sliver in the living room door, I could discern shifting silhouettes against the wall, shapes that coalesced into a narrative I had desperately tried to ignore for months. "Mike won't be back until morning," Sarah's voice purred, tinged with that familiar, intimate tone she once reserved exclusively for me. "He's too preoccupied with his garbage trucks to notice what's unfolding within his own abode." A chorus of laughter erupted from the trio. Rick Stevens, my former training companion, and Tommy Chen, who had borrowed $2,000 from me last Christmas, were present alongside Jake, the one who had pledged to look after Sarah during my extended work assignments. I leaned against the kitchen wall, every fiber of my being taut with anticipation. 14 years of friendship, 4 years of matrimony, all unraveling with the swiftness of a heartbeat. "Are you certain he won't return?" Rick's voice, now lower, carried a note of hunger. "Trust me," Sarah replied. "Mike is predictable. He'll toil until 6, stop for a coffee at that dismal diner, and then drag himself home for a shower, attempting to reclaim some semblance of relevance. We have hours." A profound shattering occurred within my chest, not of my heart, but of something far more fundamental. The deeply held belief in integrity, in the sanctity of promises, and in the very existence of good people. I moved deliberately towards the staircase, each footfall measured to circumvent the 3rd creaking floorboard from the top. In the quiet sanctity of our bedroom, I retrieved my phone and activated the camera, not to capture images, for that would be an illegal infringement without consent, but to meticulously record the time, the date, the presence of the beer bottles downstairs, and the vehicles parked outside. Evidence, I mused, has a tendency to accumulate when one knows where to seek it. From the drawer of my nightstand, I extracted the small ledger I employed for tracking our household expenditures. Instead, I began to meticulously record names, times, dates, every suspicious late night, every unexplained disbursement, every seemingly innocuous falsehood that had permeated our lives. The raucous laughter from below intensified, growing more audacious. They were no longer making any pretense of discretion. I approached our closet and retrieved an old Army surplus duffel bag from the uppermost shelf. Within, carefully swaddled in a towel that still held the faint, evocative scent of my father's cologne, lay his boxing gloves. Though the leather was creased and the padding worn, they remained functional. Beneath them nestled a photograph of him in his prime, not as a professional pugilist, but as a man who understood the imperative of self-defense. "Never strike back until it's crucial, Michael," he had advised me the day before his passing. "But when that moment arrives, ensure they comprehend the ramifications of challenging you." I carefully tucked the photograph into my wallet, slung the bag over my shoulder, and descended the stairs. The voices emanating from the living room had subsided, replaced by a hushed intimacy. I no longer required visual confirmation to comprehend the full magnitude of my humiliation. Pausing at the front entrance, I contemplated my former self. The old me would have confronted them, demanding justifications, apologies, and assurances of future amendment. The old me would have offered them the opportunity to manipulate me into believing this predicament was somehow my fault. However, that former iteration of myself had effectively ceased to exist somewhere between the kitchen and the bedroom, suffocated by the weight of an unwelcome truth. I stepped out into the cool Portland night, a fine mist of rain beginning to settle on the pavement. Behind me, our duplex was illuminated, a beacon of warmth hosting a revelry to which I had never been formally invited. 3 vehicles occupied the driveway: Jake's silver BMW, Rick's formidable truck, and Tommy's unassuming red Honda. I committed each license plate to memory before making my way to my own weathered Corolla and driving away, my gaze fixed resolutely forward. The Riverside boxing gym had been shuttered for 6 months, yet ingrained habits are resilient. I still possessed the key from my volunteer days, a period when I had assisted in training local youths. The proprietor, Pete Antonielli, had relocated to Arizona for health reasons, leaving the establishment to gradually succumb to neglect while the city pondered its fate. I gained entry through the rear portal, inhaling the familiar aroma of aged leather, exertion, and deferred aspirations. The heavy bags, like spectral sentinels, remained suspended from their chains in the dimness. I activated the solitary functioning light fixture positioned above the central ring. This place had once served as my sanctuary. For 2 years, every Tuesday and Thursday, I had frequented this venue after my shifts to instruct 12-year-olds on the proper execution of a jab, the art of self-preservation, and the channeling of anger into constructive endeavors. Now it was destined for a different purpose. I placed the army bag on the floor and carefully extracted my father's gloves. They fit with the familiar precision they always had. In the fragmented mirror across the room, I saw a reflection of my true self, not the accommodating spouse who had willfully overlooked warning signs, nor the steadfast friend who had been excessively credulous, but something considerably more formidable, something that had lain dormant for far too long. My phone vibrated, a text message from Sarah. "Working late again? You're missing a fantastic party. Jake and the guys dropped by." I studied the message for a prolonged interval before composing my reply. "Enjoy yourselves. I'll be home around 6 in the morning." Her response was prompt. "Love you, babe. Don't overexert yourself." The sheer audacity of the hypocrisy was almost commendable. I silenced my phone and slipped it into my pocket. Tomorrow, I would commence the meticulous process of dismantling their lives. Not through physical confrontation. I was too swift, too easily ensnared, and far too prone to incarceration. Instead, I would apply the principles I had absorbed during 4 years in municipal service, identifying systemic vulnerabilities, applying pressure at precisely the opportune moments, and observing the entire structure disintegrate under its own inherent weaknesses. But first, I needed to reacquaint myself with the fundamentals of combat. The subsequent 3 hours were dedicated to working the heavy bag. My father's gloves met the leather in a consistent, measured sequence of blows. Left jab, right cross, left hook. The percussive rhythm of aggression, precise and unforgiving. With each impact, I felt a subtle transformation occurring within me, a hardening, a metamorphosis into someone my betrayers would fail to recognize. By the time I departed the gym, my knuckles were raw and my shoulders ached intensely, yet my mind was remarkably lucid. I piloted my vehicle homeward as the nascent dawn painted the Portland skyline in hues of rose and gold, arriving precisely as Sarah was likely bidding farewell to her guests. The house was enveloped in a profound quietude as I entered. The living room had been meticulously restored, devoid of any incriminating traces. The beer bottles were gone, the cushions plumped, and a faint aroma of air freshener attempted to mask more intimate scents. Sarah had always demonstrated exceptional thoroughness in her deceptions. I found her in bed, adorned in the silk nightgown I had gifted her on our anniversary. She offered a languid smile as I entered the room. "How was work?" she inquired, stretching with feline grace. "Productive?" I parried, beginning to disrobe. "Extremely productive." Her gaze, heavy-lidded, observed me, likely cataloging any telltale signs of suspicion. However, I had honed the ability to mask my emotions, presenting the same weary, predictable Mike she had grown accustomed to betraying. "Jake and the guys stopped by," she offered, tentatively testing the waters. "We had a few drinks, watched a movie. I hope that was acceptable." "Of course," I responded, hanging my uniform. "They are always welcome here." The fabrication flowed with effortless ease, smooth as polished silk. I joined her in bed, bestowed a kiss upon her forehead, and murmured a fond good night. Within moments, she succumbed to slumber, her breathing deep and rhythmic. I remained awake until the first light of dawn, my mind consumed with strategic planning. The following morning, I contacted my supervisor and requested a day off, citing a family emergency, the first such request in 3 years. While Sarah showered, I surreptitiously accessed her mobile device, committing to memory names, numbers, and social media identifiers. I photographed her textual exchanges, her direct messages on Instagram, and her calendar entries. Knowledge, I reflected, is power, but applied knowledge is pure devastation. My initial destination was the Portland State University Library, where I dedicated 4 hours to researching Oregon's divorce statutes, property rights, and regulations pertaining to social media privacy. I delved into the intricacies of revenge porn legislation, cyberbullying laws, and the delicate boundary between vindication and harassment. Every step of my planned course of action would be legally sound, even if its ethical underpinnings were questionable. My subsequent stop was Kinko's, where I procured printed copies of all the digital evidence I had amassed: bank statements, credit card statements, mortgage documents, the entire financial chronicle of our shared existence. I also printed screenshots of Sarah's online activities, her profiles on dating applications, which she had apparently neglected to remove, and her work-related emails, which she had imprudently synchronized with her personal device. The paper trail of her infidelity was remarkably extensive. My third and most critical engagement was a consultation with Martha Hendress, a divorce attorney renowned for her meticulous approach. She was a sharp woman in her 50s, with silver hair and eyes that missed nothing. "I need to understand my legal standing," I stated, sliding a manila folder across her desk. "My wife is engaged in an extramarital affair, multiple affairs, in fact, with my closest friends." Martha opened the folder and commenced her review. After 20 minutes, she looked up, a flicker of something akin to admiration in her expression. "You've been remarkably busy," she commented. "This is quite comprehensive." I am employed in municipal waste management, I explained. I understand the paramount importance of thorough documentation. A faint smile touched her lips. Indeed. Now, Oregon is a no-fault divorce jurisdiction, meaning adultery does not directly influence asset division. However, there are several intriguing elements here. She tapped a bank statement. These charges to adult entertainment websites incurred from your joint account without your knowledge, that could be construed as financial infidelity. I was entirely unaware of those charges, I stated truthfully. And this, she indicated a printed email, demonstrates your wife discussing the sale of jewelry gifted to her by your deceased mother. That constitutes a separate property issue. I had also been unaware of the jewelry's disposition. Sarah had informed me that she had misplaced my mother's pearl necklace during a move. What are my available options? I inquired. Martha leaned back in her chair. We can initiate divorce proceedings immediately, seek spousal support based on the disparity in your incomes, and request that she be held accountable for the debts she incurred without your knowledge. The division of the marital home will likely be 50-50, but if we can establish she utilized marital assets to finance her affairs, I do not desire alimony, I interjected. I want her to comprehend the magnitude of her loss. Martha studied me intently. Mr. Patterson, I must inquire. Do you intend to undertake any actions that might jeopardize your standing in the divorce proceedings? I am a sanitation worker, Mrs. Hendricks, I replied. I believe in systematically and completely cleaning up messes. This time her smile was more pronounced. We will commence with the paperwork, but Michael, may I call you Michael? Be cautious. Spouses consumed by anger occasionally make decisions they later regret. I am not angry, I stated, rising to depart. I am motivated. That evening, I initiated phase 1 of my strategy. I returned home at my customary hour, greeted Sarah with my usual salutation, and inquired about her day with my accustomed disinterest. She recounted her professional activities at the marketing agency, her midday meal with friends, and her plans for the upcoming weekend. All fabrications, yet delivered with the unwavering confidence of someone who had never faced scrutiny. I've been contemplating resuming my boxing training, I mentioned casually during dinner. Sarah looked up from her salad. Boxing? Why? I've been feeling somewhat out of shape. I thought I might join a fitness center, get back into peak physical condition. That's wonderful, dear, she responded, her attention already diverted to her mobile device. Whatever brings you happiness. Following dinner, I assisted with the dishes, shared the couch with her while watching television, and retired to bed at 10:30. The very picture of domestic tranquility. However, at 1 o'clock in the morning, I quietly disengaged from our bed and returned to the Riverside boxing gym. Over the ensuing 2 weeks, I established a rigorous routine. My days were occupied by my employment. My evenings were dedicated to maintaining the pretense of the oblivious husband at home, and my nights were spent at the gym, meticulously refining both my physical conditioning and my strategic plan. Concurrently, I began discreetly reestablishing contact with Jake, Rick, and Tommy individually. My overtures were casual, innocuous texts, invitations to share a drink, and suggestions that we should reconnect more frequently. I exercised extreme caution to avoid any mention of Sarah or to betray any undue interest in their personal lives. Jake was the first to yield to my subtle enticements. We convened at Murphy's Pub on a Thursday evening, occupying our familiar spots at the bar. He appeared noticeably agitated, frequently checking his mobile device and deliberately avoiding direct eye contact. "You seem preoccupied," I observed after his third beer. "Just work-related matters," he demurred. "You understand how it is." "Actually, I don't," I countered. "What exactly is it that you do again?" I inquired, though the answer was well within my knowledge. Jake was an ineffectual insurance salesman, largely subsisting on his trust fund. "Sales?" he replied vaguely. "Hey, how's Sarah?" "Haven't seen her in a while. She's good, busy with work. You should come over for dinner sometime." Jake's countenance turned ashen. "Yeah, perhaps. I should probably be going." "Just one more," I suggested, signaling the bartender. "I really can't, Mike. Early morning." However, I had already ordered 2 shots of whiskey. "Come on, for old time's sake." He ingested them reluctantly before excusing himself to the restroom. While he was absent, I accessed his Instagram account via my phone, an account I had been discreetly monitoring since the night of my discovery. His location services were active, revealing that he had been at my residence on 3 separate occasions within the past week. Upon his return, I was engrossed in reviewing sports highlights on my phone, projecting an image of casual camaraderie. "You know," I remarked as we prepared to depart, "I was reflecting on that incident in high school when you intervened on my behalf against Brad Kowalski. Do you recall? He was harassing me about my father's drinking habits, and you incapacitated him with a single well-placed punch." Jake's expression softened perceptibly. "Yeah, I remember." "I never properly expressed my gratitude for that," I continued. "You were always there when I needed you. A true friend." The weight of guilt was palpable on his face. "Mike, there's no need to say anything," I interrupted. "I just want you to know I appreciate it. Loyalty means everything to me." He departed the bar looking profoundly shaken. Rick was my next target. I approached him at the gym where he worked as a personal trainer, proposing we share a meal. He exuded a greater degree of self-assurance than Jake, a certain arrogance, but also a degree of carelessness. "I've been meaning to reach out to you," he stated over our sandwiches. "I haven't seen you around much." "Working a lot of overtime," I replied, fabricating a narrative about saving for Sarah's birthday. "I want to get her something special." "That's thoughtful, man. She's fortunate to have you." The hypocrisy was almost overwhelming. I offered a smile and a nod. "What about you, still unattached?" "You know me," Rick grinned. "Playing the field, keeping my options open." "Anyone in particular?" "Perhaps," he confided with a wink, "but I'm discreet." I chuckled as if sharing a private joke. "A wise approach. Sarah often tells me I'm excessively trusting, that I should be more skeptical of people's underlying motives." Rick shifted uncomfortably. "Sarah's smart. You should heed her advice." "I'm beginning to," I replied. Over the subsequent week, I engaged in similar dialogues with Tommy. Each conversation was meticulously constructed to sow seeds of apprehension and remorse. My objective was to unsettle them, to make them question whether I possessed knowledge of their clandestine activities, but not to the extent that they would confess or attempt to flee. Meanwhile, my nocturnal training at the gym persisted, pushing my physical limits to rekindle skills acquired in my 20s. My aim was not to achieve professional fighting status, but simply to prepare myself for an inevitable confrontation. The pivotal breakthrough occurred on a Wednesday evening. I had been remotely monitoring Sarah's phone, utilizing software I had covertly installed during one of her showers. While the technological deployment bordered on legal ambiguity, I had no intention of presenting any acquired information in a courtroom. At 11:15 p.m., She received a text message from Jake. Mike's acting strange. I think he might know something. Her reply was immediate. Relax. Mike is clueless, always has been. Jake, I don't know, Sarah. He keeps bringing up loyalty and friendship. It's as if he's trying to signal something to me. Sarah, stop being paranoid. Even if he suspected something, what would he do? File for divorce? I get half of everything plus alimony. He earns 3 times what I do. Jake, what if he becomes violent? Sarah, Mike, please. He's never thrown a punch in his life. Besides, Rick could easily overpower him. Jake, this is becoming too risky. Perhaps we should take a hiatus for a while. Sarah, if you're experiencing second thoughts, I'm confident Rick and Tommy won't object to my undivided attention. Jake, that's not what I meant. Sarah, then cease your worrying. Tomorrow night, same time. Mike is working a double shift. I stared at the illuminated screen, a chilling finality settling within my chest. It was not anger. I had transcended mere anger. This was pure, unadulterated calculation. The following morning, I contacted my supervisor and arranged to depart work early, citing a family emergency. I dedicated the afternoon to training at the gym, executing my combinations with a precision that would have undoubtedly earned my father's approval. Subsequently, I returned home to await the evening's events. Sarah departed the residence at 8 p.m., professing an engagement with her book club. From the bedroom window, I observed Jake's silver BMW navigate the driveway 15 minutes later, trailed shortly by Rick's imposing truck and Tommy's unassuming Honda. I allowed them an hour to settle in comfortably before driving to the gym and initiating a call to Jake's mobile. Mike. His voice was a thick concoction of alcohol and apprehension. What's up, man? I need to speak with you, I stated. All of you. It's important now. It's kind of late and I know where you are, Jake, I interrupted. I know what you're doing. I know about all of it. The silence that ensued stretched between us like a taut wire. Mike, I can explain. Riverside Boxing Gym, I interjected. 20 minutes. Come alone, or I will commence making calls to spouses, employers, and social media contacts. Mike, let's discuss this. 20 minutes, Jake. Don't compel me to retrieve you. I terminated the call and waited. Jake arrived first, his face pallid and beaded with perspiration, despite the cool Portland evening. He found me positioned in the center ring, adorned in my father's boxing gloves and a simple black t-shirt. Mike, listen, I can't explain everything. Save it, I commanded without diverting my gaze from the hand wraps I was meticulously adjusting. We'll converse when the others arrive. The others? Rick and Tommy. They are integral to this discussion as well. Jake fumbled for his phone, presumably to contact them. I remained unconcerned. I had anticipated every conceivable contingency. Rick arrived 10 minutes later, sauntering through the entrance with an air of proprietorship. He was physically larger than me, more muscular. However, brute strength was not the sole determinant in a confrontation, a lesson my father had imparted. Well, Rick remarked, surveying the deserted gymnasium. This is rather dramatic. What's the plan here, Mike? Are you proposing a duel? Something to that effect, I replied. Tommy was the last to appear, exhibiting a palpable nervousness and twitchiness. He repeatedly consulted his phone, likely seeking an escape route via a text from Sarah. All right, I declared, finally meeting their gazes. We are all present. Let us deliberate. Mike, before you say anything, Jake began. Silence. The words emerged with a force I had not intended, yet they achieved the desired effect. Jake's mouth snapped shut. I am aware, I continued, of the gatherings at my residence. I am cognizant of your group text exchanges. I am privy to the betting pool regarding the duration it would take me to discern the truth. Rick shifted his weight, his hands clenching into fists. You don't know a damn thing, Mike. I know Sarah has been evading all three of you for the past 6 months, I stated. I know you have been exploiting my home, my bed, my trust to indulge in your clandestine liaisons while I labor through double shifts to finance the life she is systematically dismantling. The admission hung in the air, heavy and suffocating, like smoke from an uncontrolled conflagration. I am aware, I continued, that you have been collectively ridiculing me, labeling me pathetic, clueless, weak, and fabricating jokes about my supposed idiocy and failing to perceive the unfolding events within my own marriage. Tommy finally found his voice. Mike, it's not like that. It is precisely like that, I countered. But what you're unaware of is this. You don't realize I've been meticulously compiling evidence, every message, every image, every financial record. You're not privy to the fact that I've already initiated divorce proceedings, that my legal counsel possesses duplicates of all documentation, and that Sarah is destined to forfeit a significant portion of what she assumed was hers. Jake's complexion turned ashen. You have no way to substantiate any of this. I can readily demonstrate that you procured $2,000 from me last Christmas and squandered it on a weekend escapade to Las Vegas with my spouse. I can produce proof of Rick's illicit use of our shared credit card for hotel accommodations. I can verify that Tommy has been peddling performance-enhancing substances to adolescents at the community hub where he volunteers. That final assertion was a gamble, but Tommy's guilt-ridden expression confirmed my suspicion. Most crucially, I declared, stepping closer to the perimeter of the ring, you are all about to comprehend the repercussions of mistaking leniency for feebleness. Rick emitted a laugh, though it sounded strained. What recourse do you propose, Mike? Physical confrontation, that's not your modus operandi. You're correct, I conceded. I'm not that individual, but I'm also not the person you once knew. I dismounted from the ring and advanced to the gymnasium's central area. The trio formed a loose arc around me, displaying an air of uncertainty while attempting to project an image of composure. Here's the impending outcome, I stated. You will all depart from Portland. Each of you will secure new employment, relocate to different residences, and forge new existences elsewhere. You will vanish entirely from my sphere of existence. Or what? Rick challenged, advancing. Or I will ensure that every inhabitant of this city becomes intimately acquainted with your true characters, your families, your employers, your future partners. I will ensure that this narrative pursues you relentlessly. You're incapable of such actions, Jake protested. That constitutes harassment. Does it? Or is it merely the dissemination of verifiable facts regarding individuals' moral fiber? I suppose we shall ascertain. Rick had evidently heard enough. He lunged, unleashing a wild, uncoordinated blow that would have connected had I not dedicated the preceding month to preparing for precisely this contingency. I evaded the strike, grasped his extended limb, and employed his own forward momentum to propel him against the wall. He struck with considerable force, shoulder first, collapsing onto a single knee. Rick, Tommy initiated a movement toward his comrade, but I raised a hand. Remain precisely where you are, I instructed calmly. Unless you wish to be the next? Rick struggled to regain his footing, cradling his shoulder. You wretched scoundrel. My discourse is not yet concluded, I informed him. However, if you wish to conclude this exchange through physical means, I am prepared. Jake attempted to de-escalate the situation. Mike, let's all endeavor to regain our composure. I am indeed composed, I responded, more so than I've felt in many months. You see, I devoted considerable thought to navigating this predicament. I contemplated various avenues: physical retaliation, public censure, legal recourse. But then a realization dawned upon me. You are not worth the exertion. I ambled over to a folding chair and took a seat, still clad in my father's gloves. The verity is, you have already been vanquished, I continued. You are simply unaware of this fact as yet. Sarah is on the precipice of losing her professional standing. It transpires that her employer does not condone staff members who utilize company equipment for personal dating profiles. She is about to forfeit her residence, her accumulated savings, her social circle. And when she commences her search for a scapegoat, who do you surmise she will designate? The three men exchanged apprehensive glances. Do you truly believe she will stand by your side when the financial resources dwindle, when the property is liquidated, when she confronts the stark reality of embarking on a new chapter at the age of 35 with naught but a reputation tainted by infidelity? I shook my head. Sarah is a manipulator. She exploited you precisely as she exploited me. The distinction lies in the fact that I am extricating myself before she utterly devastates me. That is demonstrably false, Tommy interjected, though his voice lacked conviction. Is it indeed? When was the last occasion any of you engaged in a genuine dialogue with her? When did she last inquire about your aspirations, your anxieties, your hopes for the future? Or does her presence only manifest when she requires something? The ensuing silence served as a definitive response. She is already devising her departure strategy, I elaborated. She maintains active profiles on no fewer than 3 distinct dating applications. She's been exchanging correspondence with her former paramour in Seattle. She has been investigating apartment possibilities in California. More silence. However, here lies the exquisite element, I remarked, rising to my feet. She remains oblivious. I, on the other hand, am cognizant. She continues to feign the devoted wife, maintaining the pretense of commitment to our marital union. She possesses no inkling that the divorce decrees have already been submitted, that the bank accounts have been segregated, that the credit facilities have been deactivated. I proceeded towards the exit, then paused and turned back. Do you wish to comprehend the essence of genuine retribution? It does not manifest as violence. It does not manifest as public disgrace. It is simply the act of removing oneself from the prevailing circumstances and observing the subsequent implosion without your involvement. I made my way toward the egress, then halted once more. And gentlemen, Sarah received a positive diagnosis for chlamydia last week. It might be prudent for you to undergo medical examinations yourselves. The fabrication emerged with effortless fluidity, imbued with precisely sufficient detail to lend it credibility. Yet judging by their visages, it may not have been an entirely fabricated statement after all. I relinquished them to their predicament within the gymnasium. 3 individuals who had discovered, albeit belatedly, that actions invariably yield consequences, that treachery incurs a considerable cost, and that certain individuals can prove far more formidable when maintaining silence than when vocal. The subsequent morning, I encountered Sarah in the culinary area, preparing coffee with an almost cheerful diligence. indicative of someone who believed she retained command of her existence. "Good morning, my dear," she greeted, bestowing a kiss upon my cheek. "Did you sleep soundly?" "Exceedingly well," I affirmed, pouring myself a measure. "I engaged in a most intriguing discussion last evening." A subtle flicker crossed her features. "Oh, concerning what matter? Professional affairs? Tedious civic politics?" She visibly relaxed to some extent. "I'm pleased you're finally cultivating associations at the workplace. You've appeared rather withdrawn of late." The irony was nearly unbearable. "Speaking of acquaintances, I haven't observed Jake and the others around here much recently. Is everything satisfactory with them?" "I have no insight," she replied, though her tone struck me as excessively nonchalant, perhaps overly rehearsed. "You are aware of men's tendencies. They often become engrossed in their own personal pursuits." I offered a sympathetic nod. "Well, if you happen to encounter them, convey my regards." "Certainly." We concluded our repast in a state of amicable quietude. Two individuals sharing sustenance and utterly disconnected in every other regard. Subsequently, I bid her farewell with a kiss, professed my affection, and departed for my employment. During the midday meal, I contacted Martha Hendress. "How are you feeling, Michael?" she inquired. "Liberated," I responded. "When shall the legal documents be formally presented?" "Monday morning. I shall arrange for a process server to be stationed at her office, and all financial arrangements will be meticulously prepared. The joint accounts are currently frozen, the credit facilities have been terminated, and I have submitted a petition for an emergency hearing concerning spousal support. Given the evidence of fiscal infidelity, my outlook is optimistic. And what of the marital residence? She has the option of purchasing your equitable share, or we shall instigate a compulsory sale. In either scenario, you will receive equitable compensation. A palpable sense of release permeated my being. Thank you, Martha, for your invaluable assistance. Merely fulfilling my professional obligations. However, Michael, exercise caution throughout this coming weekend. Individuals can sometimes resort to desperate measures when they perceive themselves as cornered. Her cautionary advice proved eerily prescient. Saturday morning, I awakened to discover Sarah had already departed. No note, no explanation, simply a vacant expanse in the bed where my spouse had previously rested. Her vehicle was absent, her handbag unaccounted for, yet her wardrobe remained intact within the closet. I prepared coffee and waited. She returned at precisely 10 o'clock in the morning, her eyes visibly red-rimmed and emanating the scent of tobacco. Sarah had purportedly abstained from smoking for the preceding 3 years. "Where had you been?" I inquired, not out of genuine concern, but rather because the former iteration of myself would have posed such a question. "Driving," she stated, "contemplating our union, our marital bond, our collective future." I placed my coffee mug down and truly observed her for the first time in many months. She retained her captivating allure, still possessing that sharp intellect that had initially captivated me during our collegiate years. However, an undeniable hollowness now pervaded her demeanor, a palpable sense of desperation. "And what conclusions did you reach?" I queried. "That we require a substantive dialogue, a profound discussion regarding our individual desires, our mutual needs, and the efforts we are prepared to invest in preserving our relationship." The word "fight" seemed to hang suspended between us, imbued with the gravity of a challenge. "I am attentive," I responded. Sarah settled into the chair opposite me, her hands clasped on the table in a posture reminiscent of conducting a business negotiation. I acknowledge that the harmony between us has not been consistently ideal, she commenced. I am aware that we have drifted apart, that our communication has faltered from its former standard. I maintained a deliberate silence, allowing her to further entrench herself. However, I also firmly believe that the foundation we have established possesses inherent value worthy of preservation. 4 years of wedded life, all those shared aspirations, every meticulously crafted plan. Her voice began to gain strength, acquiring a more assured cadence. I am prepared to undertake any necessary action to ensure the success of our marital endeavor. Whatever measures are deemed requisite, be it counseling, therapy, or any other intervention you deem beneficial. I cherish you, Mike. I value the life we have constructed together. My desire is to safeguard that. Her performance was impeccable, delivered with a carefully calibrated blend of vulnerability and resolute determination. Had I lacked prior knowledge, I might have found myself susceptible to her narrative. That is indeed fascinating, I remarked, as I participated in a decidedly different conversation with several acquaintances last evening. The color visibly drained from her countenance. Which acquaintances? Jake, Rick, and Tommy. They offered some rather illuminating perspectives concerning our marital dynamic. Sarah's carefully constructed composure faltered momentarily. I am uncertain as to the specifics of their disclosures, but they imparted the unvarnished truth to me, I stated softly. Finally, we regarded each other across the expanse of the kitchen table, the veneer of pretense disintegrating like a discarded mask. How long have you been aware? She inquired. Does the duration hold any significance? It holds significance for me. 3 weeks have elapsed since the evening you hosted your clandestine gathering while I was engaged in my professional duties. Sarah closed her eyes, absorbing the profound implications of my statement. What course of action do you intend to pursue? My actions have already been implemented. The divorce proceedings will be formally initiated on Monday. The financial accounts have been rendered inaccessible. The credit facilities have been deactivated. The marital residence will be divested, and the proceeds will be allocated according to the proportional contributions made by each of us towards the initial down payment. You cannot conceivably implement such measures. I have already done so. She abruptly stood, moving towards the window. This course of action is utterly irrational, Mike. A solitary misstep, a momentary lapse of judgment, and you are prepared to dismantle everything we have painstakingly constructed. A solitary misstep, Sarah. You have been engaging in clandestine rendezvous with my 3 closest companions for a duration of 6 months. You have been appropriating our shared domicile, our marital bed, and our joint finances to subsidize your extramarital pursuits. You have been deriving amusement from this situation, fabricating jests concerning my perceived naivety. I never insinuated your lack of intelligence. No, you merely characterized me as oblivious, asserting that I had never initiated a physical altercation in my life. You posited that Rick could incapacitate me instantly should I ever discover your transgressions. The precise enumeration of these details struck her with the force of physical blows. She turned away from the window, her expression undergoing a transformation from outright denial to strategic calculation. You have been surreptitiously monitoring my activities. I've been safeguarding my interests. This constitutes an illegal act. One cannot simply intercept another individual's telephonic communications without their explicit consent. You are correct. Fortunately, I will not be presenting any of that information within the legal proceedings. She scrutinized me, endeavoring to comprehend the ramifications. Then by what means? Financial statements, credit card transaction records, public social media disclosures, hotel expenditure receipts, all perfectly legal and unequivocally damning. Sarah sank back into her seat, her will to resist ebbing away. What is it you desire from me? Nothing. I wish for you to depart. This is also my place of residence, not any longer. I've consulted with legal counsel. Given the prevailing circumstances, I am entitled to request exclusive occupancy of the marital dwelling pending the finalization of the divorce proceedings. You are resolutely determined to proceed with this, to obliterate everything we have painstakingly built over a few minor indiscretions. I am not dismantling anything, Sarah. You initiated that process yourself. She remained silent for a considerable interval, her gaze fixed upon her hands. When she eventually raised her eyes, a steely resolve was evident. Do you comprehend the fundamental issue with your character, Mike? You are inherently weak. You have perpetually been so. You engage in your inconsequential occupation, return to your modest dwelling, lead your uneventful existence, and you perceive this as adequate. But it is not. It is monotonous. It is suffocating. It represents a gradual demise through a multitude of minor concessions. Consequently, you opted for infidelity. I opted for the experience of living, for the sensation of something authentic, something impassioned, something that served as a tangible reminder of my continued existence. Alongside my companions, with men who exhibited no hesitation in asserting their desires, men who did not seek authorization to simply exist. Her pronouncements were deliberately crafted to inflict emotional pain, to sow seeds of self-doubt within me, and to persuade me that I was the root of the problem. A month prior, such pronouncements might have yielded the intended effect. You are correct, I stated, rising to my feet. I was indeed weak. I was excessively trusting, unduly passive, and far too willing to embrace the assumption that individuals possessed nobler intentions than their actions betrayed. Mike, but I am no longer that individual, and the man I have evolved into. He will not be subjected to manipulation, gaslighting, or intimidation into accepting meager remnants from someone who never deserved him in the first place. Sarah's facade crumbled completely. You self-righteous hypocrite, you harbor the conviction that you are vastly superior to all others, do you not? You presume that your perceived moral ascendancy grants you the authority to pass judgment upon me? I believe my unwavering fidelity bestows upon me the prerogative to expect reciprocal faithfulness from my wife. Faithfulness? She derided the notion with a bitter laugh. You were faithful to an illusion, Mike, to a conceptual ideal of what a marriage should entail, rather than to the genuine individual that I am. And who, pray tell, are you, Sarah? In essence, I am an individual who steadfastly refuses to accept mediocrity, someone who demands a richer, more vibrant existence than the routines of grocery procurement, Netflix marathons, and discussions concerning mortgage obligations. You are an individual who systematically dismantles every positive element within her life due to an inherent selfishness that prevents her from appreciating its inherent value. The words hung palpably between us, akin to a drawn blade. Sarah's countenance contorted with unbridled fury. Remove yourself from this location, she enunciated with venom. This is also my residence, if you recall. Remove yourself. Her voice escalated to a shout, all pretense of control having been abandoned. I proceeded calmly toward the main entryway, pausing only to retrieve my keys. "I shall return to collect my possessions tomorrow," I stated. "I suggest you utilize this interval to determine your future living arrangements." I spent that Saturday evening sequestered in a motel adjacent to the airport, reclining on coarsely textured sheets and gazing absently at the ceiling. At intermittent intervals, my mobile device would emit a series of text messages from Sarah, oscillating between apologies, veiled threats, and desperate overtures of reconciliation. I expressed my sincerest regrets. My anger was unwarranted. We possess the capacity to resolve these discrepancies. You are precipitating a monumental error. You will undoubtedly lament this course of action. I profess my love for you. Kindly return to our shared abode. I shall pursue every asset you possess. The gentlemen were accurate in their assessment of your character. You are demonstrably pathetic. I deactivated my phone and attempted to find solace in sleep. Sunday morning heralded a rap upon my motel room door. I opened it to find Jake Morrison standing in the corridor, his appearance suggesting days devoid of restorative slumber. "We must converse," he stated. I granted him entry, driven by an unfeigned curiosity as to his intentions. He lowered himself heavily into the room's solitary armchair, running his hands repeatedly through his hair. "Sarah contacted me last night," he began. "She is in a state of complete disarray, Mike, utterly losing her faculties. That is no longer within my purview of concern. She asserts that you are appropriating all assets, the domicile, the savings, every conceivable possession. I am reclaiming that to which I am justly entitled." Jake met my gaze, his eyes bloodshot and weary. "And what of our entitlements, Rick, Tommy, and myself? We shared a profound connection with her, a genuine substantive bond. The sheer audacity was nothing short of staggering. You engaged in an adulterous liaison with my spouse. We engaged in a relationship, or rather a multiplicity of relationships. Sarah is not a mere possession, Mike," Jake insisted. "She is an individual possessing her own desires, her own distinct needs that evidently encompass the act of humiliating her husband and betraying his trust. It was never predicated upon your involvement," Jake asserted. "It was intrinsically linked to her personal aspirations, to her sources of contentment. And her aspirations, it appears, included engaging in clandestine encounters with my 3 closest associates while I bore the financial responsibility." Jake flinched at the crudeness of my remark, but persisted. "Observe, I acknowledge the unfavorable perception of this situation. I concede that our conduct was demonstrably flawed, but Sarah harbors profound affection for us, all of us, and our affection for her is equally genuine. In that case, proceed with matrimony, provide her with sustenance, and forge a shared future with her. However, I implore you to do so without encroaching upon my property, my financial resources, or my personal involvement. The matter is not that uncomplicated. It is precisely that uncomplicated." Jake rose to his feet, pacing agitatedly toward the window. "She is pregnant, Mike." The utterance struck me with the force of a physical blow. I sank onto the bed, endeavoring to process the gravity of his revelation. Pregnant, 8 weeks along. She only ascertained this information yesterday. Whose offspring is it? We are uncertain. It could belong to any of us. It is conceivably yours. The possibility had not previously entered my contemplation. Sarah and I had been endeavoring to conceive for a period of 2 years without success. Her physician had suggested fertility treatments, but we had been awaiting an improvement in our insurance coverage. She expresses a desire to carry the pregnancy to term, Jake continued. However, She requires a degree of stability, financial security, the kind of established life that you are capable of providing. You are suggesting that I assume responsibility for raising another man's child. You desire to establish a family unit. Sarah desires a family unit. This presents an opportune moment for you. I regarded him, marveling at the profound extent of his self-deception. Do you genuinely believe I would reconcile with her subsequent to all that has transpired? I believe you will act in accordance with the best interests of the infant, if not for her sake. The judicious course of action is to extricate oneself from this predicament with the utmost expediency. Jake's expression hardened. That infant may indeed be yours. In that event, we shall resolve this matter through DNA analysis subsequent to its birth. Until such time, Sarah's pregnancy is her sole responsibility, and yours as well. Mike, depart from this location, Jake, and refrain from any further contact with me. He exited without uttering another word, taking with him any residual reservations concerning the path I had decisively chosen. Monday morning arrived with the inexorability of fate. I returned to my place of employment for the first time in the span of a week, immersing myself in the familiar routines of municipal waste management. There existed a peculiar solace in the nature of the work, the loading of refuse vehicles, the optimization of collection routes, the resolution of logistical challenges that possessed unequivocally defined solutions. At precisely 10:15 in the morning, Martha Hries initiated a telephone call. "The proceedings are concluded," she announced. "The legal instruments have been duly served." Your spouse appeared considerably taken aback. To what degree was she surprised? She experienced a collapse and had to be revived by her colleagues. It was quite the spectacle, it would seem, and the restraining order is now officially in effect. She is precluded from direct communication with you, from visiting your place of work, and from accessing any of the jointly held financial accounts. What is the status of the marital residence? She is afforded a 30-day period to arrange financing for a buyout, failing which we shall proceed with a forced sale. Given her current professional circumstances, I harbor serious doubts regarding her eligibility for a mortgage loan substantial enough to acquire your equitable share. Her employment was terminated this very morning. Apparently, her supervisor became apprised of certain personal activities that cast a detrimental shadow upon the company's public image. A subtle sensation of vindication briefly flickered within me, swiftly suppressed. By what means did they acquire this information? An anonymous tip was received. Someone furnished them with screenshots of her dating profiles, accompanied by rather explicit correspondence she had exchanged with certain clientele. Sarah consistently demonstrated a notable lack of caution regarding her digital footprint, exhibiting an excessive degree of confidence in her capacity to compartmentalize her life. I found myself contemplating whether she had finally grasped the profound reality that actions invariably carry consequences. The ensuing several days unfolded with a peculiar sense of tranquility. I dedicated myself to my professional duties. I engaged in rigorous training at the gymnasium. I explored apartment listings in various urban districts. For the first time in a considerable period, I experienced a profound sense of liberation, an ability to truly breathe freely. Subsequently, Tommy initiated a telephone call. "Mike, we urgently require a meeting. It pertains to Sarah." I possess no inclination to discuss Sarah. She's been admitted to the hospital. That statement arrested my attention with immediate effect. What precisely transpired? An attempted self-inflicted harm. the ingestion of pharmaceutical substances coupled with alcoholic beverages. Jake discovered her this morning. Those words struck me with the chilling impact of icy water. Whatever actions Sarah may have undertaken, whatever ruin she may have wrought, I never harbored the desire for this outcome. Is she? She is currently alive and in a stable condition. However, Mike, she is requesting your presence. I am unable to visit her. A restraining order is currently in place. Medical professionals have indicated that she may attempt to repeat such an action if she does not achieve a sense of closure. They are soliciting the involvement of family members. I am no longer considered family. You remain her legal spouse until the divorce is officially finalized. I closed my eyes, the weight of responsibility I had presumed to shed settling upon me once more. Which medical facility? OSU. The 5th floor. The journey to the hospital felt akin to traversing through a dense medium like water. Everything appeared distorted and strangely unfamiliar. I had spent the preceding week consciously cultivating a perception of Sarah as an adversary, a problem requiring a definitive resolution. The contemplation that she might, in fact, be profoundly broken, experiencing genuine suffering, introduced a significant layer of complexity to my perspective. I located her within a private room, her form appearing diminished and pale against the stark white of the linens. Bandages encircled her wrists, and a tube extended from her arm to an intravenous fluid bag. She was conscious, her gaze fixed upon the ceiling with an expression of profound emptiness. "Hello, Sarah." She slowly turned her head as if the mere act of movement demanded considerable physical exertion. "You came?" "Tommy conveyed that you expressed a desire to see me. I wish to see you one final occasion to offer an explanation." I occupied the plastic chair positioned beside her bed, maintaining a deliberate and cautious distance. An explanation for what? For why I engaged in this conduct, for all of it. "Sarah, I implore you, allow me to articulate my perspective." I offered a slight nod, settling back in anticipation of her disclosure. "I was in the process of expiring," she stated softly. "Within the confines of our marriage, within the framework of our shared existence, I was undergoing a gradual process of dissolution. Each day brought the same dull rhythm, the same empty exchanges, the same predictable horizon stretching endlessly before us. I felt as though I were suffocating, trapped in a suffocating existence. So you sought solace elsewhere. My infidelities stem from a profound need to feel vital again, to experience desire, to be cherished, to be deliberately chosen. I yearned for something beyond mere resignation, born of routine or obligation. For 4 years, my deliberate choice was you every single day. You, however, embraced an idealized version of me, the wife, the future mother, the woman destined to complete your vision of marital contentment. Yet you never truly saw me, the authentic individual beneath the facade. I felt an urge to retort, to defend myself, but a profound sincerity in her voice arrested my impulse, a raw truthfulness I hadn't encountered in years. "What is it you wished for me to perceive?" I inquired. "Someone who required more than you were prepared to offer," she responded. "Someone who craved exhilaration, spontaneity, the unpredictable. Someone who was gradually fading beneath the immense burden of your aspirations. My expectation was your unwavering fidelity. Your expectation was my perpetual gratitude. Gratitude for the dwelling, the security, the social standing, gratitude sufficient to feign contentment with that as my sole requirement. The dialogue was spiraling into peril, the kind of emotional manipulation that had defined the entirety of our union. Yet something had shifted. Sarah wasn't striving to win a debate. She was endeavoring to be understood. "The pregnancy," I stated, "is it genuine?" "Yes," she confirmed. "Whose child is it?" "I don't know. Honestly, I haven't a clue." "What do you intend to do?" "That too remains uncertain. Everything is gone, Mike. My career, my home, my future. The men are terrified, contemplating abandoning the town. I possess nothing left." "You still have options." "Do I? I'm 35 years old, unemployed, carrying a child whose father I cannot identify, and facing a separation that will leave me utterly bereft. What options are available to me?" Her self-pity was palpable, yet beneath it lay a profound desperation. For the first time since this ordeal commenced, I felt a flicker of empathy for her. "You can embark on a new beginning," I suggested. "People achieve this daily." "With what resources? I have no savings, no references, and no family members who will offer support. I've irrevocably severed every tie, dismantled every connection, estranged everyone who ever held me dear." "That too was a choice you made," she observed. "Indeed," she conceded, tears finally welling up. "It was, and I must bear the repercussions. However, Mike, I need you to comprehend that causing you pain was never my true intention. Not genuinely. I needed something you were incapable of providing." "And what precisely was that?" "Sanction to be self-centered, permission to desire more than I merited, the liberty to dismantle something precious because I was too broken to appreciate its value." Her admission hung suspended between us, a chasm neither of us knew how to bridge. "I am profoundly sorry," she whispered, encompassing everything, "for the deception, the infidelity, the humiliation, for making you feel inadequate when, in reality, I was never sufficient for you." "Sarah, you deserved far better," I stated. "You merited someone who could recognize the inherent worth in what you offered rather than someone fixated solely on what was absent." I remained seated for an extended period, absorbing words I had desperately needed but never anticipated. An apology that resonated with authenticity, an acknowledgement that felt genuine, a sense of complete accountability. "What transpires now?" I inquired. "Now I must endeavor to navigate life with the consequences of my actions, to construct something from nothing, to become a mother when I can barely manage my own existence." "And the divorce?" "I will not contest it. You may claim whatever you desire. I lack the fortitude to continue this conflict." I rose abruptly, feeling utterly drained. "Take care of yourself, Sarah, and ensure the well-being of the child." "Mike," she called back as I reached the doorway, "I did love you. Perhaps not in the manner you required, but I did love you." "I am aware," I replied. "I loved you as well." And then I departed, carrying the burden of 4 years and the unexpected lightness of liberation in equal measure. The dissolution of our marriage was finalized 3 months later. Sarah relocated to Seattle to reside with her sister, taking with her a modest financial settlement to aid in her fresh start. The pregnancy progressed without incident, and subsequent DNA testing confirmed Tommy as the father, who promptly vanished to Colorado, severing all communication. Jake and Rick both departed Portland within weeks of Sarah's personal collapse. Jake returned to live with his parents in San Diego. Rick moved to Phoenix, where he secured employment with a fitness chain. Neither of them ever reestablished contact. I retained the house, along with the majority of our jointly owned assets. The court showed little leniency towards Sarah's claims, particularly after examining evidence of her financial misconduct and emotional neglect. 6 months after the divorce, I encountered Martha Hendress at a downtown coffee shop. "How are you adapting?" she inquired, joining me at my table. "Better than anticipated," I responded truthfully. "It's quiet, but it's a beneficial quiet." "Any regrets?" I contemplated the question with deliberate care. Regarding the divorce? None. Regarding my approach to it? Occasionally. Second thoughts about the retaliatory aspect, not retaliation. Justice? There is a distinction. Martha offered a slight smile. Is there? Or is that merely our rationalization for feeling better about the decisions we've made? Perhaps both, I admitted, but I sleep soundly at night, and each morning I awaken with the certainty that I am precisely where I am meant to be. And where is that? Free. A year passed, and I received a birth announcement in the mail. Sarah had given birth to a healthy baby girl, Emma Grace. The father was listed as unknown, and Sarah had reverted to her maiden name. A brief note was enclosed. "Mike, I wanted you to know that Emma is healthy and happy. I'm working as a barista and attending evening classes in accounting. It's not a grand existence, but it's honest work. And I'm learning to appreciate what I possess rather than lamenting what I lack. Thank you for compelling me to confront my true self. I hope one day I will be worthy of the forgiveness I do not deserve." I kept the note for a few days before discarding it. Certain chapters require complete closure before new ones can commence. 2 years after the divorce, I met Rebecca at a community garden where I had begun volunteering. She was a kindergarten teacher, recently widowed with a 5-year-old son named David. We began as friends, progressed to lovers, and ultimately developed something far deeper. She was aware of my previous marriage, the betrayal, the pursuit of retribution, and the bitter aftermath. She never judged me for it, nor did she attempt to mend what was not broken. "You are no longer that angry man," she told me one evening as we observed David playing in our backyard. "How can you tell?" "Because angry men don't plant tomatoes. They don't read bedtime stories. They don't construct tree houses. Perhaps I've simply become better at concealing it." "Perhaps," she said, kissing my cheek, "but I don't believe that." 3 years following the divorce, Rebecca and I exchanged vows in an intimate ceremony held at the community garden where we had first met. David escorted her down the aisle, proud to gain a stepfather who instilled in him both the art of throwing a proper punch and the enthusiasm for cultivating vegetables with equal fervor. I never heard from Sarah again. I never saw Jake, Rick, or Tommy. They receded into mere footnotes in a narrative I had concluded, characters in a book I had closed and set aside. Occasionally, in the quiet of the night, I would reflect on the decisions that had led me to that moment in the boxing gym, amidst the wreckage of friendships and a marriage. I would ponder whether an alternative path existed, a gentler route, a resolution that didn't necessitate such utter devastation. But then I would gaze at Rebecca sleeping beside me, at David's artwork adorning the refrigerator, at the life I had painstakingly constructed from the remnants of the old, and the truth would become undeniably clear. Sometimes the only means of self-preservation involves allowing everything else to burn. Certain individuals warrant a vigorous defense. Others demand complete withdrawal. The discernment lies in recognizing the difference. And occasionally, when those you trusted most prove themselves unworthy of that faith, the most compassionate course of action for them and for yourself is to extricate yourself so completely from their lives that they are compelled to confront their true selves, unburdened by your presence, which might inadvertently enable their worst inclinations. I came to understand that love devoid of respect is mere dependency, that loyalty without mutual return is simply exploitation, that absolution without accountability is an open invitation for repeated hurt. I realized that retribution is not about inflicting suffering, but about refusing to absorb it any longer. And I learned that the most potent act a man can undertake is not to fight for a relationship already defunct, but to depart with sufficient dignity intact to forge something superior. The former Mike would have persisted, would have attempted to salvage the irreparable, would have accepted blame for failures that were not his to bear. The current Mike understood that some contests are won by declining to engage. On our wedding night, Rebecca inquired if I ever missed my former existence. "Which aspect?" I replied. "The certainty, the routine, the feeling that you knew who you were and where you belonged." I paused for a moment, then shook my head. I never truly knew who I was back then. I knew who I believed I was meant to be. There's a fundamental distinction. And now I comprehend precisely who I am. I am a man who refuses to accept less than he deserves. I am a man who honors his commitments and expects the same from others. I am a man who cultivates gardens, raises children, and constructs enduring legacies. And if someone attempts to dismantle what you've built, I smiled, thinking of my father's gloves still hanging in the closet of our new home, then they will learn the same lessons Sarah and her companions discovered. "That's some," Rebecca chuckled, nestling against my chest. "Remind me never to cross you." "You won't," I assured her, kissing the top of her head. "You're not that type of person." "How can you be so certain?" "Because you are here, truly here, not searching for something superior, not maintaining an exit strategy, not viewing this as a temporary stopover to something else. You are fully invested. What if I were to change? What if I became a different person? Then we would face that together. But Rebecca," I continued, "I am not apprehensive about that prospect." "Why not?" "Because you have already witnessed me at my absolute worst, and you chose to remain. That reveals everything I need to know about your character." She was silent for a moment, then whispered, "I love you, Mike Patterson. I love you too." And for the very first time in my adult life, I knew those words were unequivocally, completely true. 5 years after the divorce, I received a final communication from my past, not from Sarah, but from Jake Morrison. It was a handwritten letter on expensive stationery, postmarked from San Diego. "Mike," it began, "I realize I have no right to contact you after everything that transpired. I understand you likely wish to avoid hearing from me, and I will accept it if you discard this letter unread. But I felt compelled to express certain sentiments and to know that I had at least attempted to atone, even if you cannot accept it. I have spent the last 5 years attempting to comprehend what occurred between us, how 3 men who had been friends since childhood could behave as we did towards someone we claimed to care about, how I could betray the confidence of an individual who had never provided a reason to doubt his friendship. The straightforward explanation is that we acted selfishly, that we let our baser instincts dictate our actions, that we became ensnared in something that felt thrilling and neglected the eventual repercussions. However, the genuine reason is more intricate. We felt threatened by you, Mike, by your stability, your integrity, your capacity to construct a life based on principles more substantial than immediate gratification. We rationalized that you were uninteresting, that Sarah deserved superior, that we were doing her a favor by providing the excitement you couldn't offer. But the stark reality is we were envious. You possessed something genuine, something enduring, something we lacked the maturity or the character to cultivate for ourselves. Consequently, instead of ascending to your level, we dragged you down to ours. I am not penning this to solicit forgiveness. I recognize that is not something I merit, nor is it an obligation you are bound to fulfill. I am writing because I wished for you to comprehend that what transpired irrevocably altered me, not instantaneously. I spent the initial year wallowing in self-pity, attributing blame to you for your excessive harshness, and to Sarah for initially implicating us. But eventually I was compelled to confront the truth of my own transformation, and I found what I saw deeply unappealing. I have been engaged in therapy for 3 years now. I have made amends to my family, my colleagues, and the individuals I harmed through my selfishness and dishonesty. I have learned to accept accountability for my actions without resorting to excuses or deflecting blame. I want you to know that Sarah is faring well. She remarried last year to a good man who is fully aware of her past and loves her regardless. Emma is healthy and content, and Sarah has evolved into the kind of mother and wife she should have been from the outset. She has rediscovered her path toward becoming a decent individual, much like I am striving to do. I also wish for you to be aware that I heard about your remarriage, about your stepson, and about the life you have built. I am genuinely happy for you, Mike. You deserved far better than what we inflicted upon you, and I am gratified that you have found it. I do not anticipate a response to this letter. I seek neither forgiveness nor friendship nor any other form of reconciliation. I simply desired for you to understand that your decision to distance yourself from us and the manner in which you navigated the entire situation imparted a valuable lesson regarding consequences and character. You possess the power to utterly dismantle us, yet you chose to obliterate only those facets of our beings that merited such a fate. You granted us the opportunity to become better individuals, even if it took us years to acknowledge it. I hope you are happy, Mike. I trust your new family brings you all the joy and tranquility you never found with us. Your former friend, Jake. I read the letter twice, then shared it with Rebecca. Are you going to reply? She inquired. I don't believe so. What would be the purpose? Closure, forgiveness, moving forward? I moved on 5 years ago. This is about his need for closure, not mine. But you've kept the letter for now. I might discard it tomorrow, or I might keep it indefinitely. I haven't made a decision. Rebecca nodded, understanding that some resolutions don't require immediate finality. Do you believe him regarding Sarah, about her change, about her remorse? I believe he genuinely feels what he's conveying. Whether it's entirely truthful or not is of little consequence now because you no longer concern yourself with it, because I prioritize other matters. That evening, I accompanied David to his Little League game and watched him strike out twice, but also make a fielding play that secured victory for his team. Rebecca cheered from the stands, 8 months pregnant with our first child together. After the game, we indulged in ice cream and discussed school, upcoming summer vacation plans, and whether the baby would be a boy or a girl, the mundane yet cherished conversations of a normal family. This was the kind of existence I had always yearned for, but had never known how to construct until I learned to detach myself from the elements that were actively undermining it. Later that night, after David had gone to sleep and Rebecca was engrossed in reading, I ventured into the garage and retrieved my father's boxing gloves. I held them for a moment, recalling the man who had imparted to me the wisdom of when to fight and when to withdraw. Then I carefully placed them back in their box and returned to the house, to my wife, to my life, to the future I had chosen over the past I had endured. Some narratives conclude with violence, others culminate in justice. The most profound ones find their resolution in peace. This is one of those.